David Shoemaker and Kaz host The Masked Man Show every week, breaking down everything in the world of professional wrestling. Check out The Masked Man Show on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by 3M. 3M has always been driven to improve lives with science and innovation. It's this forward-thinking mindset that led 3M to invent household items you've come to know and love, like Post-it notes and command hooks. But 3M believes they have a responsibility to use their science to improve lives in even more ways. That's why they're responding to the COVID-19 crisis by working on solutions for some of today's biggest challenges. As a leading provider of personal protective equipment, 3M is producing critical products for healthcare workers and first responders, and donating to local and humanitarian aid partners around the globe. They're also making more respirators than ever before, with plants working around the clock, producing more than 95 million respirators per month in the U.S., helping those on the front lines continue the fight. 3M Science, applied to life. Learn more about how 3M is helping the world respond to the COVID-19 pandemic at 3m.com/COVID.
This episode is brought to you by Pizza Hut. They say love is like pizza. You know it's real when every bite is the best bite. Or at least that's true about the edge from Pizza Hut. Imagine 16 slices with toppings all the way to the edge, atop a thin and crispy crust of a large pizza, and sprinkled with custom garlic herb seasoning, guaranteed to take you all the way to the edge. Order for contactless delivery or curbside pickup on the Pizza Hut app or at pizzahut.com. No one out-pizzas the Hut. Prices higher in some location. Limited time only. Not available with other deals. Additional charge for extra cheese and additional toppings. Product availability, participation, availability of contactless, curbside and delivery areas. Charges and minimums vary. Delivery charge is not a tip.
Welcome to The Mismatch. I'm Chris Vernon, and joining me as he does every Tuesday from TheRinger.com is Kevin O'Connor, a.k.a. Kevin O'Bomber, Kevin O'Concert, Kevin O'Candyland, Kevin O'Camera, Kevin O'Kindness, Kevin O'Climber. Kevin!
Bruno! What's going on today?
Well, we are headed towards the stretch run. The standings look different every single day. We've got a couple of teams that are cratering that we are going to talk about. But before we get to all of that, you came out with your power rankings. Now, I know that it has been customary when you come out with your power rankings, you try in the at least soon after to not pay attention to who is yelling at you the most. But I must ask you, have you noticed if one team's fan base is yelling at you the most based upon the power rankings that you put out?
No, not this time. I got the least hate on my rankings for this week than any other power rankings editions this season. It's kind of weird, Chris. It's funny. One of my friends asked me this last night when we were playing Warzone. Before the national championship game, he's like, who are you getting hated on the most? Nobody this week, Chris.
Nobody.
Why? Is there a team that stands out? Did I hit too low or too high?
I mean, look, I think that teams' fan bases are going to get mad at you about ranking them lower than they think they should be. Nobody's going to get mad at you for ranking them higher than they think they should be, right? And frankly, the ones that you have pushed lower, the team isn't playing well recently. Therefore, a fan base is typically really down on their team when they're not playing well recently. It is always the team that is doing really well that feels unacknowledged, right? What have you been watching, right? We've been so good. But the truth is, you've got a lot of people that are fans of teams in the NBA that I would think right now have a decidedly mediocre team that they root for. And so you're not going to get it's not apathy, but it's just lack of passion when you're just win one, lose one, win a couple, lose a couple, like no big streaks either way. And then you have that group of people whose teams have been faltering as of late, and that makes up a reasonable group, right? There's only, I mean, honestly, how many fan bases right now are thrilled with their team? Utah, Brooklyn, Philly's not.
Philly's not
right now.
No.
They're never happy.
Ben Simmons down lately.
Bucks, probably.
Yeah, I think Phoenix should be very happy.
Phoenix,
right
yes,
now.
thrilled.
Clippers have concerns. Paul George right now dealing with the toe injury. Definitely not 100%. Lakers obviously have guys out. Nuggets should be thrilled right now. They should be feeling great.
They're through post trade deadline with the way the Gordon things worked out.
Sure. Blazers fans still worried about the defense. Mavericks fans are feeling really good. Big win over Utah on Monday night.
Yeah,
Luka
but they just had the Porzingis injury, and now here we go again.
Yep.
Can't count on it. This kind of stuff. So
Celtics fans are feeling better now. Evan Fournier is in the COVID health and safety protocols. I mean, nothing. The Celtics are starting to trend up, and then that happens.
Yeah, that's a brutal. That's brutal, especially when he got going a little bit. All right, let's go through this. So the point is, I mean, you could probably count on your hand how many fan bases feel great about their team right now. It's maybe the lowest amount that we've had in a long, long time, because even teams that have expectations, they're not meeting those expectations, except for a few of them.
Doesn't that open up the when you don't have like many of those teams? I think a lot of fan bases can feel like there's a chance, though.
Absolutely.
I think that's what makes this year really interesting. Like, there's a lot of teams I look at them and I'm like, oh yeah, I could make the argument for them to go all the way to the NBA Finals and maybe win the whole freaking thing. Like, it's that type of year.
I don't know if I can make the argument for a lot of them to go to the NBA Finals, but I can make a lot of them the argument to go to the conference finals.
Fair.
I don't think there's many I can make the argument that we'll get to the NBA Finals.
I think we can, personally.
Really?
Yeah. It's a strong year. I mean, you could say LeBron and AD get back and stay healthy and everything's fine for the Lakers, but there's no guarantee of that. Paul George with the toe injury right now is not the same player. Ever since that first became an issue for him, his numbers are way down. He's just way down. He's admitted that it's bothering him. And like, that's the type of thing, had that in the power rankings. I talked to Brian Suterer, who's like a sports doctor on YouTube, has a great channel there where he analyzes injuries. And he said to me, this is the type of thing that can require many weeks, more than a month for it to completely go away.
In your article, it said 7 weeks.
Yeah, 7 weeks sometimes. And like, there's no 7 weeks to rest. You can't get those rests if you're Paul George.
Kev, I mean, I'm reading that and I'm like, well, hold on now. Like, if all things were called off, right? Then you'd want to rest on that thing possibly 2 months.
Exactly. Possibly.
To be able to get where you need
not
to
feel
be
it,
or
nothing
want to
there. Be. Exactly. Because that's the type of thing where when you ramp up, and this is according to Brian Suterer, when you ramp up activity like Paul George had to get back on the court, that's when it can start lingering and get coming back until the offseason, when you actually have those 7+ weeks to rest and to be able to work it back in a way that doesn't re-injure it or make you feel pain. So that's a concern. And when you have that factor there, Chris, I think that opens the window for the Suns or the Jazz or the Nuggets or even the Blazers, to jump through and maybe go all the way. Like, I feel like it's almost even though a fan base might not feel like, yeah, we feel awesome about our odds, the fact not a lot of teams are saying that in and of itself means like you can feel pretty good, maybe even better than any other year recently. That makes it fun to me.
Yeah, no, you certainly have the opportunity now. And regarding the Paul George thing, this is something that does not get talked about very much that I thought about, which is when you are hurting, right? And it's inevitable. He's going to be hobbled, right? According to what you wrote. It's never going to be perfect, at least until you get to the offseason and give it some rest. When the numbers are down since this has come to light. When you are hobbled like that, what ends up happening is you put yourself at risk of other injuries because you start favoring that. And so the more you start favoring that, the more pressure it puts on your knee that wouldn't normally have the same pressure, or your back that might not have normally the same pressure. And so it can really cascade, to where, yes, this is the one thing that hurt, but it ends up increasing your opportunity to have other ailments and other things that really bother you before the end. And so, like you said in your article, they need all NBA Paul George to be able to go to the NBA Finals. Like that's which is what their expectations are as an organization. I mean, they mortgage their entire future to be able to do this. So they fancy themselves as an NBA Finals team, but in the absence of him being not good, great, they have no chance. Like, he has to be great.
Can't have another pandemic playoff run. Just can't happen.
No. All right, let's start with the team that you ranked first, which is the easiest ranking ever, because they have been consistently great all year long. There was one tiny blip, but still to this day, they've only lost 11 games, and that is the Utah Jazz.
Now.
Oh, 12, I'm sorry.
Dallas beat them last night.
That's right. They lost last night to Dallas. They've lost 12 games. The numbers on the three-point percentage with volume/rate in which they hit them is crazy. And you kind of tied in, and I'm going to let you give these stats to everybody listening. You tied in that they did shoot an extremely good percentage as a team last year. They just didn't shoot it as much, right? Their frequency of three-pointers. So the question is, what would happen if they just shot a lot more of them? Are they shooting that number because those are the great ones, right? Those are really good shots. And so that's, of course, why they have this really good percentage. But if they shot a lot more, then the quality of those threes is going to go down. Therefore, the percentage is going to go down. And in fact, damn near the opposite is true. They've shot more threes, and they shoot them even better.
So last season, Utah was number 1 in three-point percentage, but they were 8th in three-point frequency. This season, they have a chance to be the first team in NBA history to shoot at least 40% of their shots from three-point range and hit 40% of those shots. And this year, they're attempting 49% of their shots from three-point range. Nearly half, Chris. Nearly half of their shots are threes, and they're hitting 39.5% of those. So they're not quite at the 40% mark. They didn't shoot the ball well from three last night against Dallas, so their numbers actually dipped slightly. But they have a chance to be, 40% from three in the year, attempting over 40% of their shots. In NBA history, we've only seen the 17, 18, 19, and 20 Rockets do that, and the 19-20 Mavericks. So there's only been 5 other teams that have attempted over 40% of their shots from three. No surprise. This is a recent boom with teams doing that, but Utah has made that leap into that, upper threshold of NBA three-point shooting teams. Portland's doing it this year too, but nobody's shooting the ball as well as Utah with that amount of frequency. And I don't know, like in the blurb in the article just wrote about how the guy who doesn't shoot any of them, and Rudy Gobert, is such an important piece of that. And, we've talked and touched on this a little bit throughout the year, but it's just it sickens me sometimes to see the disrespect at Gobert from like Shaq on TV because he's not a high volume scorer, because he's not scoring 20 points. Rudy Gobert creates shots for other people just because he's already such a dominant pick and roll finisher. Defenses have to collapse into the paint to respect that, which opens up teammates. And Gobert has gotten way better over the years as a passer at kicking the ball out of the short roll to shooters or creating defensive rotations. I just think Gobert doesn't deserve some of the disrespect that he's gotten. People talk about his defense, but he's so important to that Utah Jazz offense as well. I mean, if you want to talk about the most valuable player on Utah, Mitchell or Conley or Gobert, I mean, to me, it's Gobert because he does so much beyond the box score, and he's part of the reason why that team has been so good for so long, as you said, Chris.
It will be fascinating to see if they have to sacrifice in the playoffs, that once somebody game plans against them, are they going to be able to function the same way that they do right now? Because that has been the issue with the Houston Rockets. When it came to the playoffs, that, over the course of 7 games, the whole live by the three, die by the three, when you are shooting that high of a percentage and you're really playing with at least one guy that doesn't shoot them, that what is the what's the price you pay for that? And can these teams that you are playing against in the playoffs expose that and make you play differently and less comfortable than you want to? They're not just going to let you bop the ball around and until you get it to a corner three. They're going to stay home and stay attached to those guys because you know that when you get to the playoffs, that is what the other team is going to try to game plan against. And that was the issue. You know what I mean? I remember you talking about like, hey, like it wouldn't be so bad. And this is why Chris Paul was so successful for those Rockets teams. It wouldn't be so bad if you just stepped up a few feet and took some mid-range jumpers or some floaters, for this team, because they have just decided they're not going to let you shoot this high percentage from three. If anything, they're going to stay attached. And so it's going to be fascinating because they certainly have been great doing it during the regular season.
I think part of that, Chris, is we're going to see probably, maybe, and we'll see what happens in the postseason, depends on matchups and so much, but we're likely going to see more teams switch pick and rolls against Utah. Mm-hmm. Like if Gobert is screening about half the time, according to Second Spectrum stats, defenses drop their defender into the paint. That's because of Gobert, the way he rolls. That's naturally what you're going to do. But maybe in the postseason, we'll see more switching in those scenarios.
Well, and I'll tell you this. I saw Utah in person twice about a week ago. And in the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies just decided they were gonna rush that stuff, and Mike Conley just floated them to death.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Utah this year, Mike Conley for years has been one of the league's better ISO scorers. In terms of efficiency, better pick and roll scorers in terms of efficiency. Mitchell is better this year than ever before. Better shooter, better shooting numbers, better getting the basket. Everything about him is better. Jordan Clarkson, likely the sixth man of the year. Joe Ingles, an efficient guy, Bojan Bogdanovic, an efficient guy. Like they have a lot of guys who can create a shot for you if you need it. Conley and Mitchell being the two main ones, and then Clarkson. But like they can beat you by committee. They don't have the one singular star from the perimeter, but they have guys that can do that.
Well, and it's pretty simple when you think about it, and this is why it can be so devastating. If you have Ingles in one corner and you have Bogdanovic in the other corner, I mean, anybody could just envision this in their head. They have either Mitchell or Conley at the top. They run Gobert up there to be able to set the screen. And so now you've got a choice to make. And Donovan Mitchell or Mike Conley is either going to try to get to that mid-range and drop that floater on you, or if your guy from the corner pinches in, they're just going to kick it out. And those guys are deadly. I mean, I would bet, I haven't looked at it, but like those numbers are freaky anyway, that you say percentage-wise. There's no telling what they shoot from those corners. I mean, because they run there in transition and knock down those corner threes. Even Clarkson knocks down the corner ones. It's just they are a tough guard, especially. So to your point, if you do cave in on that, they have shown a willingness to be able to just kind of go in the lane, and they've got guys that can hit that, 10 to 15 foot shot, which is what the Rockets were reluctant to do, during those years, right?
For what it's worth, Chris, you mentioned the corner three numbers. They lead the NBA in frequency of corner 3-point attempts.
Yes.
And on the year, according to Cleaning the Glass, they're seventh in percentage at 42%. Isn't that amazing? 42% is seventh.
I mean, they on fast breaks, they run there.
Yeah, they do.
They run to the corner three. I mean, some people get irritated by the whole, hey, just take the layup or take the odd man break. But if they get an odd man break, many times you're going to see somebody just totally flare out and get to that spot. And so you have to stay attached to them. Anyway, that's an easy number one and kind of why they have been number one this year. And we'll see if it holds up when it comes playoff time. But they're certainly a title contender, to say the least.
This episode is brought to you by Wells Fargo. When the pandemic threatened to close the oldest Black-owned tailoring shop in D.C., owner Eddie Lofton saved his business with the help of a $10,000 grant from Wells Fargo's Open for Business Fund. That's how J.C. Lofton Tailors made a way. Wells Fargo is helping small businesses like Eddie's make a way, by donating roughly $420 million to nonprofits through their Open for Business Fund. Learn more about the stories of other diverse entrepreneurs at wellsfargo.com/together.
One of the things I do want to ask you is there have been a couple of additions, just going through your power rankings, that it jogged my brain on something, which is when you're talking about the Nets, you talk about Nick Claxton, right? And you talked about how the numbers are the numbers, right? And his ability to switch. And you bring in these veterans, and you even mentioned that Steve Nash is going to have a decision to make. I can totally see this being a thing, right? Where it's in between LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. Like, you have got these aren't veterans. These are like 10+ year veterans. And are you going to be willing to play the better player, right? Are you going to be the guy that actually, by all accounts, helps you win more, but does not have the years of service, does not have the playoff reps, might make a mistake here and there that you've got to live with? And it just feels like they brought in some guys, and that's going to be a thing. It's odd that he was really cracking right before that trade deadline, and then they bring in guys that probably, even if it doesn't reduce his minutes the rest of the regular season, probably will in the playoffs.
I don't know about that personally. I think we're going to see matchup to matchup, series to series. Like, there very well might be a game or a series in which you don't see Claxton. There might be a series in which you don't see much Blake Griffin. I mean, like, it really could be like that with the Brooklyn Nets. And DeAndre Jordan, in all likelihood, will be the odd man out for the most part. But Claxton's ability to switch, there's good reason why Steve Nash was using him to close a lot in fourth quarters. Aldridge and Blake and Claxton, to me, are the three main guys. And that'll, like, their minutes and their usage and maybe even who starts will depend on the series in the playoffs. Like, even this week, we saw Claxton play 17 minutes against the Knicks. The game before that, he played 8. It wasn't the game for him because he doesn't have that size for a big man battle. So, that could, it could create that scenario that you're talking about where there's debate about who should be playing. But I just based off the trends of the year, I would predict we're going to see differences series to series.
Well, that'll be
Brooklyn.
the Nash thing. Because look, coaches play veterans, Kev. They do.
You're right. They do.
Yeah. Fans don't get mad. Fans never get mad. I mean, never. You never see fans getting irate about a veteran not playing enough. It's always the young guy that doesn't get to play enough.
That's true. But like, Claxton was closing fourth quarter games though, before they got Aldridge and Blake Griffin. So like, I mean that to say Steve Nash has a history of playing a young guy over the veteran in the fourth quarter, and like just
I think it's easier with DeAndre than Aldridge is what I'll say.
It is easier. It's definitely easier, but the fact Nash did it already makes me believe that he'd be willing to do it again in a playoff series or even in a big game during the regular season. Like, I wouldn't expect that to change. Maybe it will. Aldridge has been pretty good for them. Blake Griffin's been pretty good. So we'll see how that pans out over the course of the year. But the fact they have so many options is what's most impressive. And they all do totally different things on the court.
And what's going to be most fascinating about them is, do they have all three of those guys healthy when it's playoff time?
And that's part of it too. I mean, it's injury history, age with these guys.
Yeah, well, and it really, and I'm talking about forget the center position, which is intriguing. Also, their stars. Do they have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden available and healthy when it comes playoff time? Because it has just been so long since we have seen three of them, and honestly, it seems rather infrequent that we even see two of them.
Yeah.
You see Harden, but there's no Kyrie. You see Kyrie, but there's no Harden. Like, if you flip on a Nets game, the chances of you seeing Kyrie and Harden and their guys have been very, very, very low. And I mean, the three of them on the same court, I can't even remember what it looks like anymore.
They've only
Seriously.
played 186 minutes together.
Crazy.
That's pretty wild. That's wild, isn't it?
That's less than 3 games
Yeah.
worth of time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
pretty nutty.
insane.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't believe it. Yeah.
For those guys.
And the good thing for them is that KD's an easy guy to integrate into the mix. You
think? You just throw him the ball.
You just throw him in there. It's okay. And plus, they've played together before.
Yeah.
So it's not like they don't have some existing chemistry, and they're such high IQ basketball players. All of them are so smart on the court. So it's easier to do that. But yeah, I would imagine it's still kind of difficult though, right?
Yeah.
Working that chemistry together and getting that rhythm before the postseason. This is not going to be an easy run in either conference.
Look, all we need to know is that not only are they integrating those 3, the whole lineup around them has changed.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't have reps
Good
with
point.
the other guys either. It isn't like you're plugging them in and it's the Joe Harris and Bruce Brown like they were kind of playing when those guys were playing together.
Blake, Aldridge. Yeah.
And these guys are getting real minutes. All we need to know is, yes, we know that it can be extremely devastating, but you're headed towards less than 20 games that you will have played together. And think back to when we had, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, and it was thrown together. It took a while. I mean, they weren't devastating until January of that year. You know what I mean? Maybe December, right? But like the beginning was, you can't just throw 3 stars together, right? The chemistry. But I mean, I remember that. ESPN had a whole site dedicated to it, like Heat Check or whatever it was called, right? Or the Heat Index, and hired all these people. And like it was every day we were getting news about that team. And it was like, are they going to have to find a different coach? LeBron is mad at Spo. This thing ain't working. And it's like, they went through growing pains until, and I obviously lost the first go round in the finals. It's going to be fascinating to see if they can just throw it together with the Nets, because they are not going to have a lot of time before they've got to be ready for playoff basketball.
And that's essentially what they're going to be doing.
Yes.
I mean, right
just
now,
throwing it together.
Harden with the hamstring strain right now. It's the type of thing with that stuff can linger, dude.
Oh, yeah.
It can linger. I mean, there's so many variables this season with some of the injuries that guys have had.
Well, the two that you mentioned, the Harden one, obviously, which is a hamstring. You always want to you always get your antennas up when there's something like that. And the other one was PJ Tucker and the calf. I mean, those are muscles. Those just have to heal. They just have to heal. And it's a matter of how serious they are. Now, obviously, if you catch it early, if it's just a little twinge, you could just get some rest and whatever. But how many times have we seen either a guy have a hamstring or a calf problem, and then 2 weeks turns to 4 weeks, 4 weeks turns to 6 weeks? I mean, then Chris Paul's just missing the playoffs. You're just not getting him back. I mean, it's happened over and over again, because there ain't nothing you can do with a muscle except for time. It's just got to heal. And so you're right. I mean, if you've twinged it already and you're Harden, at what point?
Isn't it kind of crazy with Harden? At the time that deal happened, I thought, oh yeah, no chance Harden or KD or Kyrie for that matter will win MVP or have a chance to win MVP. And just the way the season has played out with KD missing so many games, Kyrie being in and out of the lineup, Harden had played himself into that conversation. He's not a top my ballot right now. I have Jokic there right now. But, you had Harden be part of that conversation. LeBron was considered the favorite at one point. Embiid was considered the favorite at one point. And I think, we'll see how much time Harden actually misses, if any. He played 4 minutes last night and then was taken out after, missing a couple games. So we'll see there. But it's just, we've had 3 of the arguable top candidates for MVP now missing time.
Oh, yeah.
And for Harden, specifically in Brooklyn, I thought this year was going to be about integrating him in with KD and Kyrie having a lower usage. And instead, he was doing effectively what he's done before to carry that team in spite of the fact other guys were missing. It's just a weird season for James Harden when he's been the same guy when we expected to see something so much different, but we still might see that in the playoffs. It's just this whole season's funky.
All those awards have just like so many of them have just become like the two biggest MVP and Rookie of the Year. It's like,
yeah, because LaMelo could lose it,
right?
Potentially.
Like the only one that is, I mean, look, Gobert probably win Defensive Player of the Year. They'll give it to him, but Clarkson's probably got a pretty solid lead on six man. Monty Williams is going to run away with Coach of the Year. Like that one's the one in the books, right? He's the one in the books. But in terms of the MVP, Rookie of the Year, those things are there for the taking in this last stretch run. Couple other things I want to ask you about that you mentioned throughout your article. We were talking about how you mentioned Kevin Durant, just easy to integrate, plug and play, and it seems to me that in many of these cases around the league, it's always easier to acquire the guy that is the role player, the guy that can just be plugged and played, as we say, and there's always going to be some kind of stress or lag time for integrating somebody that does a lot more. And I think we're seeing that with like the Vucevic's of the world and the LeVerts of the world and guys that are not just you can bounce a ball around and they'll get whatever shot they get. But to that point, you mentioned the Gordon thing, and Dan Devine has an article on The Ringer today about how great that has been. I mean, he is like the ultimate, like whenever I'm trying to give an example of this, like acquiring a guy that you could just plug him in and you ain't even got to run any plays for him. He can run the baseline. He can cut. He can just sit in the dunker spot, whatever. Like the Gordon thing has worked out perfectly fit-wise in Denver.
Yeah, in the power rankings, I have a play in there that I think sort of defines Aaron Gordon's time with the Nuggets so far, where Jokic made the one-handed catch for the finish at the end of the Clippers-Nuggets game last week, and Gordon caught the ball on the roll and just quickly flipped it to Jokic. Perfect pass, perfectly timed, in sync, as if they've been playing together for many years. And that's the way it's felt. Like Gordon has just come right in immediately, and he fits. It just works. He's kind of the connective piece between Murray and Jokic, giving them another creator who's not going to be a primary guy for you, but can occasionally run a pick and roll for you, who can occasionally be utilized as a screener on the short roll, can occasionally bring the ball up the floor. He can cut, he can spot up, he can defend multiple positions at a high level. I mean, he's come right in right away and played at the best level of production in his entire career, Chris. It's kind of crazy to watch. I mean, we've talked about him ever since we've done this pod. Started in 2016. I've always loved Aaron Gordon. I didn't expect him to be this good this soon with a new team. I thought it would take a little bit of time still, but boy, it's fun to watch.
Well, and it's one of those times where we talk about so much of a guy's destiny can be about fit, right? I always was reluctant towards the Aaron Gordon can be a lot more, can be a star, right? He is an unbelievable role player. That's what he is, right? Like, I think that people fancied him as like at least some, right? If he just got out of Orlando, he could be whatever. But the truth is, he's a guy that can help you win. He can defend. He can roll to the basket. And he's not going to be a star. He's not going to make all-star teams. But he is going to be an extremely valuable piece in the league that can help you win basketball games. And when you're talking about being on the high end or the highest end of role players, there's no shame in that.
Oh,
there's stars, and then there's the guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you end up having 15-year careers by being high-end role players. Danny Green still has value. Trevor Ariza has had value for 20 years. PJ Tucker, he's 36. When he gets traded, people are like, or when he signs with the Bucks, it's like, oh, this could actually move the needle.
Or you could be Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Like Draymond Green is what he is. He's a elite role player, one of the greatest role players of all time. And like those guys can raise the floor of a team and raise the ceiling because of what they provide next to the quote unquote stars. Like, you can be a star in your role, regardless of what your role is, whether you're the guy handling the ball for 8 minutes a game, shooting 20 shots a game, or the guy shooting 5 times a game. Like, if you can be a star in your role, you can help your team. And Aaron Gordon is in that role with the Denver Nuggets right now.
And the trick is being happy with that, right? A lot of guys aren't happy. A lot of guys aren't happy with that the first 3-4 years in the league. Some guys, even 6 or 7 years into the league, sit there and say, I should be able to do more. And the Nuggets had, guys like that. Malik Beasley wanted to be more than what he was going to be on the Nuggets, and Jeremy Grant wanted to be more than what he was going to be on the Nuggets. Yeah. It feels like when you're 7 years into your career, somebody like Aaron Gordon's like, all right, I'm cool being this,
Yeah, I mean, that's part of, like, to tie it back to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
I think that unselfishness should be appreciated. I mean, I look at that as such a positive thing. If you embrace your role and maximize your responsibilities for the team that helped them win at the highest possible level, like, I think that's something that should be commended and admired and shared, to people, more so than like saying, oh, this guy doesn't score 25 points per game, therefore he's not worth max money. Like, I just hate that that's the discourse with certain players. And it's just really cool to see Aaron Gordon come in and boom, right away fit in, right away embrace a brand new role with a brand new situation where it's very clear what the hierarchy is. Jokic is number 1, Murray is number 2, and then everybody else fills in the blanks in the ways that they need to. Michael Porter Jr. as well deserves credit. A guy who for years now there's been concerns about his defense. He's playing the best defense of his career, man, because he's making the choice to lock in and focus on that end of the floor. He's put in the work off the court to improve fundamentals, to have a better awareness of defensive spatial awareness. Like, these guys deserve credit for doing the little things. And that's why Denver has gotten better over the course of the year. And that's why Denver feels like they're about to start peaking at the perfect time. Like, they're serious threats in the Western Conference. Are they the favorites? No. I mean, we've talked about this before, Chris. Like, the Lakers are the favorites if LeBron and AD are healthy. But they may not be, and the favorite doesn't always win. The favorite doesn't always win. And Denver, they have who I think so far should be the MVP in Nikola Jokic. The MVP, a lot of times, ends up in the NBA Finals, Chris.
He does. It has not worked that way for the back-to-back MVP in Giannis.
That's not, no.
But he's got a different version of his team by virtue of Drew Holiday being added to that mix. Signed a big deal this past week, which some people did raise their eyebrows at for Drew Holiday. But I mean, again, to me, Drew Holiday is a winning player. He is the consummate two-way player, and he fits in that odd, the Mike Conley zone, which is, okay, he is not the Damian Lillards. He is not the Steph Currys. He is not like the highest end of the star spectrum, but I'm comfortable with my guy, taking my guy into the fight, right? This guy's not, he's not a shrinking violet, and he's not going to be overwhelmed by this matchup. And so he falls into that odd category of doesn't have a million all-star teams, isn't going to be the guy that's the leading shot taker on the team, but is going to be great on both ends of the court and is going to help you win basketball games. And you don't just automatically write off that matchup as, okay, we're at a real deficit with this. I'm a huge Holiday fan. And to me, like with somebody like Milwaukee, you're not signing big free agents. What the hell are you spending that money on if you ain't? and you just gave up 100 million things. You can't have Drew Holiday not be part of this going forward. So the price is the price. And I know that people will sit there and go, Drew Holiday, that much money? But I mean, look, it's the price of doing business at this point.
Well, I saw some stuff on Twitter yesterday about like who are they bidding against. There's not a lot of teams that are contenders that have cap space this offseason, etc. The thing is cap space can be created. Like, there's always threats out there. We saw the way the Miami Heat got Jimmy Butler, in which they signed and traded for him with Josh Richardson as the salary in the deal, sending him to Philadelphia. There's always a threat out there who can make a play for a free agent and try to work out a sign and trade. And so for Milwaukee, it makes some sense to lock up the guy long-term now. And plus, why would you not want to? As you said, like, you gave up everything that you did, all those draft picks to get Drew Holiday, and he's fitting as well as he did, as he is already. I mean, he's providing the scoring when he needs to, and especially in games Giannis is out. He's always providing elite defense, and he's not just a guard defender. A lot of guys who are 6'3", 200 pounds only defend guards. Drew Holiday has the length and the strength to defend bigger wings, and he does it pretty well. So if you're the Bucks, this is exactly the type of guy you would want to have next to Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton. So just get it done, man, and enter the playoffs on a high, with all these guys locked up long-term, ready for their first run together.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the truth is, we just got through a trade deadline where the biggest name that everybody was talking about as the desirable guy, whether it was for Miami or it was for the Lakers or it was for the Clippers or it was for Philly, was Kyle Lowry.
35 years old.
I mean,
yeah,
right? Like, we just got done talking about how everybody, like, it was the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes. And who's going to end up with Kyle Lowry? Kyle Lowry is a guy that could really move the needle and push somebody